Today we are going to talk about how to finish your dragon eye sculptures. So here's an example of what we're aiming for to try and make the finished product of these. We have your sculpture that you've created in Model Magic, and then today we are going to start talking about how to create this background and how to use value, shape, and texture to make our scales have more of a realistic quality. Okay, so you can see with this one I chose a color of green, kind of had a theme for my dragon, and you can even add things like spikes or other aspects to your background besides just scales. So let's start with the basic, what do we need to think about with scales? Well, just like with fish or reptiles, scales have some qualities that can help us as we are figuring out how to create them. So when we're talking about scales today, you might want to think of the shape of your scales. Just as in nature, the scales may be different depending on the purpose or nature or environment of the dragon. Maybe your scales are more of a rounded shape. Maybe they are more of a pointed kind of shape. Maybe they are a more rectangular or squared shape. Okay, so they're first thinking of what shape you'd like. And second, how are we going to make these scales look more realistic? Well, we're going to think of what color. We're going to think of creating value, which means we are going to create light and darks of that color. How do we do that? We have our color, we add black, and then we also add white. Okay, so here is an example of a blown up version of a scale. You can see at the top of the scale, I've created shadow by adding black to my red. You can see I have my main red. And then at the end of my scale, I've created a highlight using white. When we use colored pencils, the white of our paper just becomes our lightest value. You can also consider texture. How am I going to add texture using line? Maybe there are ridges I can show with Sharpie. This would be kind of maybe the last step. Maybe there are bumps or other types of texture on the scales. Okay, so today what you guys are going to do is create the background. When you get your dragon eyes, you will also get a mat board we are going to use to build our base of our dragon scales. Okay, so after you put your name on both places, we're going to want our names on the back of our dragon eyes in Sharpie, and we're going to also want them on the back of our mat board. Okay, depending on your mat board, you might have some other color on the back. These are just recycled. Make sure you have the white side up. Okay, so once you have your names on both of these pieces, you are going to take your dragon eye and place it as close to center as you can get, and you are going to trace it. We want to know where the general placement of this eye will be so that we can leave that space open and draw our scales around. Okay, just so you guys can see this better, I'm going to go ahead and outline this in Sharpie. You guys will be working with pencil. Okay, so now that I have my space where my eye will go, I'm going to think of what shape do I want my scales to be. Okay, maybe I want round, pointed, again, more squared. All right, once you have decided what shape you want to go with, you are going to draw that shape around your dragon eye space. So you can start wherever. I'm going to go ahead and do more of a squared off one here because my other example had more of a pointy one. And so I'm just going to draw this sort of hill shape, but keeping the corners more squared to give my dragon eye kind of a squared off look. So I've gone all the way around my eye space, okay? So at this point, I could add something else like maybe a spike with just sort of a curvy triangle, maybe a spike down here, okay? Often dragon eyes, if there's a spike, we see maybe a little bit of the under the scale, maybe a little of that reptilian skin where the spikes are poking out. So you can add some texture with little circle shapes around the spikes if you add any. Okay, now I'm going to continue my scale pattern, and as I build it up, it's just like bricks. Wherever two scales come together, that's where I'm going to draw the next scale. And this is how you get that overlapping look, okay? And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can just work your way around. You want to bring your scales all the way to the corners of your mat board, okay? As if this was just a snapshot of our creature and we can't really see the rest of it. Now, the next thing you're going to do today is you are going to start adding value using black. Okay, we will later add your color on top, as you can see I've done with the green, but first we're going to put the black value down. So what you want to think about here is find the top part of your scale, or where it goes into the skin of your dragon drawing, and this is where you're going to add the shadow. Okay, so with the black colored pencil, I am going to find the base of each scale, color it black, and then I'm going to light until I reach white. Okay, so what I'm doing here is creating a shadow, a base place, and a highlight. Okay, so I'm going to go around every scale and simply add a little shadow at the base and fade it all the way to white. Okay, we will incorporate colors next time. Okay, so my goal is that every scale has a little bit of a shadow at the base. And notice how my base is going around my dragon eye shape. Okay, that helps us to get the idea that these are protruding out from this dragon eye. Okay, and then as the scales overlap, every place they overlap is going to be a shadow. And that's going to help to push that texture and three-dimensional quality. Okay, so that would be the end of this day. Okay, so moving on to our next step, once you have all of your black outlines, okay, all of your shadows, so that means every space, even my scales could have some shadows here. Okay, so I've added black all the way around. I am now going to start adding in my color. Okay, so you can see here's purple with black, here's like that sort of rose color, a little bit of green. You can absolutely incorporate two colors. So for example, maybe I want this rose color and I want more of a high pink color. You want to make sure they are analogous colors though, which means they are next to each other on the color wheel. Okay, so because they are analogous, I should be able to mix them successfully to create a brighter and more unique color. So what I'm going to do with my color once I go in is I'm going to color right over top of my shadow space and then lightly color in the rest of the scale. Okay, because I already have this black down, it's going to help my scales create value. And then I'm going to go ahead and leave the end of the scale white, as we've talked about here, because that's my highlight. And our highlight, since we're using white paper, is simply the paper showing through. Okay. So this is always kind of an exciting part because now I can start to see this depth created. Okay, and you're going to continue going around until you fill the entire scale.